if you don't have an assistant, you are the assistant. And given that assistants are typically, if you hire from Eastern Europe, probably like $6 to $8 an hour, pretty sure everyone listening to this podcast, your time is worth more than $6 to $8 an hour.
Hey friends, it's Steve. Want to know how a $5 book lands a $5,000 client? I've recorded a 15-minute video showing you our magnetic author method. It's up now at magneticauthor.co/video. Welcome to the Unstoppable CEO podcast. I'm your host, Steve Gordon, and today we got an amazing interview for you. We've got, I think, a topic that is probably the most important to virtually every business owner, and that's how do I build a team? And not just how do I build a team in general, but how do I build a team right now in the present environment where we've gone from remote work being kind of a weird little side thing to being the way that most companies are looking at the future. And so I've got an absolute expert in that today. I'm talking with Noel Andrews, and way back in 2018, he bought a company called JobRack after 10 years of building and leading large teams in the corporate tech world. Since then, he's helped businesses all over the world hire more than 1,000 remote team members from Eastern Europe. And along the way, he's narrowly avoided burnout, which we all can deal with. He's built his own team and recently published a book on digital delegation. So I'm excited to dive into this because delegation is always a challenge, I think, for business owners. And now that we're in this remote digital method of working, it's, I think, even more difficult sometimes to wrap your head around. So Noel Andrews, welcome to the Unstoppable CEO podcast. Excited to have you here.
Hey, Steve, really, really good to be here too.
So you left corporate and you decided to jump in and become an entrepreneur and focus on probably the most difficult problem that every entrepreneur faces. That's a pretty brave thing. How did you kind of get to the point of saying, this is what I want to do?
Yeah, so like I said, been in the corporate tech world for years and lots of kind of leading, hiring, firing, managing large teams. And I actually had a moment a few years before I bought JobRack where I'd interviewed 8 candidates in one day. And they're all lovely people, but terrible interviews. And I was driving home and I was going, what went wrong, right? What was going on? And I realized actually no one's ever taught how to interview. And so off the back of that, I created an interview coaching business and we tried to scale that. So I was very much in that, helping candidates, helping people kind of get great jobs. And then just at the point that I was kind of running out of cash and deciding that wasn't going to be the long-term business, JobRack came up for sale. And it was tiny at this point. It had been mothballed. It was doing $15 a month in revenue, right? So it truly had been mothballed. And it was just in a sweet spot. So I've been entrepreneurial for many years. I was in and amongst some of these communities with like kind of entrepreneurs and online business owners. And JobRack had built up a nice little name for itself. They built the custom tech. They had a good little database. And obviously a business doing $15 a month doesn't tend to be that expensive to buy. And so it was that little kind of serendipity moment. And jumped in. Then obviously it was making $15 a month, so it couldn't quite support me. So I was still doing some corporate kind of interim work at the same time for a couple of years just to get, build things up. Just that serendipity moment of, this is the right thing for me to do. And, remote hiring has just gone from strength to strength and then strength to strength. And then the last 2 years, obviously, the whole world has woken up to the possibility.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know you started off working primarily with mostly businesses that you would consider traditionally online, but that's really changing. You were telling me, where do you kind of see the state of things with remote work and with businesses beginning to embrace, now that we're past the crisis of the pandemic where everybody was forced to think this way, how are you seeing like the trends of how people are thinking long-term now about it?
I think it's a fascinating time. I really do. And every now and again, I come across people that are still saying, hey, no, we're not going remote. We want everyone back in the office. We want, everyone to be close by and things like that. And we want everyone to be, local, or at least within the same country. And I can have some quite robust conversations with business owners like that. And I respect everyone's view. But what I'm seeing from my clients and the people that I work with that are really, having incredible success is the ones that are basically leveraging opportunities to hire remotely, whether it's within the same country or across the world, to be able to hire sooner, to be able to scale faster, to be able to get better quality people. And that's the really fascinating thing. So I work with an SEO agency out of Boston. And a few years ago, they were hiring exclusively Harvard grads. They were working with expensive local Boston-based recruiters, and they were having a tough time with it. And, they were bringing these people in on pretty good salaries, very low level, kind of entry-level positions. But it was hard work for them. And then we kind of did a little trial with them, and we hired, in their case, an SEO analyst out of Eastern Europe. And the quality, the work ethic just was incredible. And then the cost was the thing that made the absolute difference. And so what they were able to do is just scale quicker. So, your average agency owner tends to not be able to hire until, 120% of their at capacity, right? Until it's almost like too late. They're already annoying the customers. And it's the same for most businesses. Hiring is expensive in terms of the fees that you normally pay. It's very expensive in terms of your time because it's hard, and salaries can be expensive. So I think what I'm seeing is people just kind of waking up and realizing the opportunities, and then going, oh, well, what if I do this differently? How can I make my life better? And let's be clear, right? We're working to live, not the other way around. There's far too many business owners that are just working too many hours, not able to get the help and support they need, whether it's a really great assistant or whether it's managers or real kind of lieutenants, as I refer to them, to help lead that business. So I think it's a fascinating time as everyone's just asking questions and trying it out. And there's some businesses that have been doing it for years really successfully and having incredible results. And there's other businesses that are just dipping their toe in the water and trying it out. But I don't think I've seen anybody try it and then go, nah, this isn't for me, we're going to go back. Because the opportunities are just huge, and it's a lot of fun, and still huge potential.
So what are a few of the biggest advantages that are driving people towards this?
So the number one advantage is just availability of the skills that business owners want. If you are, as an example, if I take the SEO agency in Boston, or if you're an attorney and you're based out of Philadelphia, or you're an accountant and you're based in Miami, you want to find local talent. Well, it's either really, really expensive or it's just not out there. So what we've seen from this last 2 years with the pandemic is a lot of people have just reevaluated life and said, do I want to work 5 days a week? Do I want to still be doing that job? Do I want to have my own store on Etsy or eBay or whatever it might be? And so the availability of talent is the first thing, right? So there's regions of the world that have got the skills, the experience, people that want to work really hard and really commit for the long term that are actually available at rates you can afford. And that's the key thing, right? It is, if you're living in somewhere, kind of a first world city, cost of living is high. And so that means that salaries are very high. And you may not be able to afford that as a business owner. Or if you do, it means you can hire one person. Whereas if you were paying half as much for an equally or better skilled person, well, you can hire 2 people. Or you can hire earlier, and that then lets you grow your business or get the help that you want or work less. So that's the big thing. So number one is definitely availability of the talent that people want. And then number 2 is definitely the cost. And that kind of, for me, it's not about exploiting people or, paying unfair kind of rates. It's about paying people well for where they live. And then, the opportunity that brings for you and your business is pretty big.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we've been able to take advantage of that, both inside the US, because we've been 100% virtual since I started the company. And it was a conscious decision at the time because I wanted to be able to tap into the best people. And so we started just with hiring in other places around the US and getting the exact talent that we needed. And that's been transformational. But then we started hiring people outside the country, which is a little bit of an adventure. I mean, it's a little bit of a leap of faith, because I didn't have anybody at the time like you who could guide me through the process, who kind of knew the ropes. But it's worked out really, really well. Has it been perfect? No, we had a couple of missteps along the way. Anytime you do something new, you're going to have that. But it was, they weren't expensive or catastrophic mistakes by any stretch. But, it's allowed us to do all kinds of things, like take advantage of shift in time zones to get work done on off hours from our core team. It's certainly allowed us to get things done at a reduced cost while giving someone in a different part of the world a really good lifestyle. And so everybody wins. I mean, there's just so many benefits to it. And you tap into talent and thinking that's a little bit different. And that's a good thing.
Yeah, definitely. And the time zone one, I hear that lots of people have a fear about the time zone and say, well, don't I need them to be working exactly the same hours as me? And what we always try and do, and my big belief on this is you want ideally about, if it's full time, you want like 3 to 4 hours of crossover each day. Is like that for me is the sweet spot. And it's really easy to get that. So my speciality is Eastern Europe. It's really easy to get that with Eastern Europe. And if you have that, then you have more than enough kind of time for one-to-ones and team meetings and just collaboration. But what it means is they've already done 3 or 4 hours work before you've even woken up. And so that kind of just almost like geo arbitrage, both on the financial side, but the time side of things is absolutely amazing. You're kind of just getting more done. And actually what we often find, and I definitely find it with my team, is they're often more productive. And we see it with a lot of clients. There's typically a lot of chatter in the average office, even a remote office, right? Across Slack, things like that. So actually, if you've got some of your team that are working when the rest of the office isn't awake, they get a lot more done, which is really quite cool.
Yeah, without a doubt. So let's talk about that a little bit, because I mean, one of the fears going into this, my first business, we were traditional. We had multiple offices, but everybody was in an office. And the hard part of the transition was, well, if I can't see what they're doing, how do I know that they're working? How do you deal with that with your clients?
Yeah, so I always love this one because I just think back to my corporate days and I think back to how many people looked like they were in the office or they were in the office and therefore it looked like they were working, but there was a lot of Facebook going on right then and things like that, right? There were a lot of coffee breaks getting taken and things like that. And so what it's really common is to compare and go, oh, I can't see them. Therefore, they might not be working. So the first thing is just to acknowledge that actually the people that you could see when they're in the office probably weren't working all the time either. But what we often find is that people tend to really value the ability to work remotely, to not be, schlepping through a crazy commute to work and things like that. And to have some of the flexibility, a little bit of the flexibility that often comes with, being able to work remotely or work from home. So that's the first bit. The second bit for me is, so I do use time tracking with my team, but I use it in a very particular way. I don't do anything that takes, you can get these tools that take screenshots of what they're working on. We don't do that. And I set a very clear expectation of why we're time tracking. So there's a couple of reasons for us. One is I want to know what they're working on. Because what I'm generally looking at is we tend to look at it with them maybe every few weeks or every month. Because I want to look and say, well, are there some things that we should invest some money in automating? Are there some things that are taking more time than they're really worth? How can we, help everyone to be to have more interesting jobs or do more things? Personally, for our business, I also like to apportion it for profit tracking per client, so we can see which roles are taking us, the most effort and how's that working. And I just say to them, I'm like, look, if you don't give me a reason to look at it, I'm not going to look at it, right? But if at some stage we think you're not working hard enough, then we're going to have a look at it and we're going to understand what's going on. So we set that really clear expectation up front so people know that we're not looking to use it as a big brother type thing. And so there's a big thing about if you give people trust, 99 times out of 100, they're going to reward you with it. Now, the really interesting use of time tracking that we found that we've ended up doing over this last 6 months is stopping people working too much. So by us keeping an eye on it, it actually lets us see when someone is either just working too hard, right? And either that's because their workload is too much, which I'm not happy with. And so therefore we take steps to reduce it. Or perhaps there's a training need and things are taking them too long. And we can use that again to say, well, okay, what's going on here? Let's dig into it. And that's been really powerful. And it also tells us, well, oh, hang on a minute. No, they're just really busy. It's an indicator of when we need to hire, because some people will whinge and moan as soon as they're at 60% capacity, right? Not many, but some. Some people won't let you know until they're at 150% capacity and they're flat out, burnt out, they need 6 weeks off. You don't want to get to that stage. So we find it really useful to look and say, okay, well, what's going on? Which things can we adjust? Do we need to bring someone in? So that's the big thing for me. So one is remember that actually just because they're in an office doesn't mean they're working. And two, that actually the vast majority of people are really trustworthy, want to do a good job. And we make sure that we've got really good and simple employee scorecards and kind of KPIs and metrics. And we use those as part of monthly one-to-ones to just talk through what they're doing and, what are their ideas and how's it going. So we know if they're doing the work they should be.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the key point, is that most people are going to do the right thing. And most people want to do the right thing. They want to do well. Will you find the ones that don't? Yeah. But I don't ever really worry about it. They tend to surface themselves. If you spend all your time focusing on that, you tend to just get more people like that because you're not trusting.
Yeah. And the big thing here is that so the people that we help our clients hire are what I call team members. And so a lot of people, when they think about remote work, they think about, right, I'm getting someone to do tasks, right? I'm just outsourcing some tasks, a bit like if you're going on Fiverr or Upwork or something like that. And for me, yes, that's possible and that's fine. But if you really want to get the big benefits, get someone that's going to be a team member, right? So a true member of your team, they're committing to you for the long term. You invest in them as well, so that they feel like one of the team, right? They're invested just the same as you would if you were hiring someone locally. And so I use the word team member really intentionally because, legally, they are not an employee, right? Okay, almost certainly. If you're hiring across borders elsewhere in the world, they're going to be self-employed. They're going to be responsible for their own kind of tax and social security. They're going to invoice you each month. So it's nice and simple. So in the US, it's like along the lines of a 1099 contractor. So legally, they're not an employee, but you want them to feel like an employee. And that's why I use that word team member. And again, if people are invested in you, if you're investing in them, then it kind of, like you said, those people that aren't the right people kind of rise to the top pretty quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are some of the complications people run into when they're making this shift? I mean, if somebody's thinking about it, where are the kind of the potholes to avoid?
So I think there's a couple of things for me. So one is being intentional about how you make them feel like part of the team, right? So if you're in an office together, you have the kind of, water cooler type chat in the morning, right? Or the coffee machine, or maybe you go for lunch together. But if you're remote, that doesn't happen. So you need to be a bit more intentional about it. So here at JobRack, we do, we have afternoon tea every Friday. We have half an hour. We all jump on the call. It's completely optional. And we just chat. And the only rule is there's no work chat. So that, we're intentional about that. We're very intentional about actually checking in on Slack with each other during the day and having little kind of stand-ups and things like that. So that's the first thing. Just you need to be a little bit more intentional about those like ad hoc type kind of moments that actually kind of help people to get to know each other. The other one is when you're building a team and you're choosing where to hire remotely. There are fantastic people available from basically every corner of the globe. And some regions are better for some things than others, and there's different kind of cultural differences. What you want to avoid, if you can, is having people in every time zone, right? Because then it starts getting really complicated. If you've got people in North America, Europe, Asia, Australasia, man, coordinating a team meeting, someone is getting up in the middle of the night, right? And that's just a headache and an overhead. So just try and make your life easier where you can. And then common things that people kind of expect are pitfalls that actually turn out to be really easy. Communication, because you've got tools like Slack and Teams and project management tools that make that super simple. Zoom obviously is a lifesaver these days. And then making payments, again, super simple. Typically Wise or Payoneer, really, really low fees right now, or in general, and super simple. So sometimes the things that you expect to be hard are really easy. And the things that sometimes people don't think about just takes a little bit more effort, like being intentional about kind of spending time with each other.
Yeah. And I think that's the key, is that intentionality. So, and that's the piece of this that I think a lot of people don't think about. It's one thing you get into this and you think, okay, well, how am I going to get them to work? And how are we going to, get it back and measure the progress and all of that kind of thing, all of the logistics of doing the job. But if you don't think about the human part of it, it's really hard to build that cohesive structure. And I think you said something really important a minute or two ago about really thinking about your remote people as members of the team, and not just people where you sort of throw a task over the fence and hope that they throw it back the way that you want it. We tried this for a long time, and we had sort of team members and we had people on the other side of the fence that we would throw tasks to. And every time we would throw the task over, it was like a 50-50 whether or not we were going to get it back the way that we wanted it, right? When we switched from that and started looking at, all right, let's see if we can go find people who will work with us almost like equivalent to sort of a full-time person. Maybe they're working with other people as well, but maybe we're getting half of their time or 2/3 of their time where we're able to build that relationship. Man, it changed everything.
Yeah, I talk about shower thoughts, right? So this is, I have to give credit to two guys, Dan and Ian from the Tropical MBA podcast for this one. And they talk about getting someone shower thoughts. And so the difference versus having someone just a few hours a week and having someone maybe 20 hours a week or full time, or 20 hours a week or more, is you get some of their shower thoughts. They're in the shower in the morning, they're thinking about you, they're thinking about their job, their customers, what they're kind of focused on. And linked to that is, delegate like responsibility and outcomes, not tasks. So like as an example, like I'm working with my operations manager right now, and we're working to improve our client onboarding process. And I'm a bit of a control freak, right? Standard entrepreneur, CEO, right? I suspect some people that'll resonate. And it would be really easy for me to be really hands-on and like, well, I want to improve that bit. I want to improve that bit. And I have to like sit on my hands and say, no, let's just agree what we're looking to do. We're looking to improve the client onboarding. We want to have at least 2 or 3 wow moments that really just make our clients feel really great. And how are we going to measure it? Well, we're going to ask people to score the onboarding process. And so we want to take it from X to Y. Off you go. And there's 2 things that really happen there. One is I free up my time and I free up my headspace, which is huge. But the second one is actually the outcome is generally better, because people then, the person that you're giving it to, so Noemi, my ops manager, she then feels like she's got more autonomy. She feels like I trust her. And then she it just generates this kind of like a virtuous circle of, goodwill. And actually we get way better results from it. So I get more time, I get more headspace, and we get better results. So I have to remind myself continuously to delegate responsibility, delegate outcomes, not, tasks. And like I said, that is where the difference is huge. And I think the key thing for me is I want to, I talk to my team about this. I want to pay them well, and I want to expect a lot. And so I think, for anyone out there that's thinking about kind of remote hiring, the first thing that people often think about is, I could get a really low cost VA from the Philippines, for instance. And people then tend to have quite a low expectation. And I'm like, no, have a high expectation, right? Have a really high expectation for what's possible. Don't compromise or think you need to compromise because you're hiring remotely. If you imagine the best possible person you could ever hire, let's say in the US, you should be expected to get equal or better for a lower cost. It's not about, getting someone that's not as good.
No, absolutely. And I mean, there are smart people all over the world. We tend to live in our little bubble sometimes and don't realize just the level of talent that's available. And because of cost of living differences is also very affordable. And that's one of the things that's been really interesting as we've done this, to look at somebody who's living, in a different place, different cost structures to how they live. We're able to give them a really solid lifestyle and do it without breaking the bank. Whereas we might not be able to do that here. We would have to hire someone lower on the talent scale, or we couldn't give them the same kind of bump in lifestyle. And so you're able to hire a more of a premium level of talent just because of that difference in cost of living.
Yeah, which is huge. I mean, the cost differences are absolutely massive. And one of the challenges that I face when I'm having calls with business owners, and they'll be like, hey, I want to hire, the XYZ role, whatever it might be. And then we talk about the rates, and they are just so fundamentally different from hiring in the US or Canada or the UK that people are like, that can't be right? That's too cheap. They can't be any good. And it's like, no, it's just it's considerably cheaper to live in Sarajevo in Bosnia or Belgrade in Serbia than it is in New York or London or Miami, or even secondary and tertiary cities like in North America. So the difference is huge. And, I get sometimes people worry and say, well, yeah, but isn't this kind of outsourcing jobs or offshoring jobs from, our own countries? And the key thing for me is that a lot of the time, or most of the time, the businesses I'm working with, they can't afford to hire locally. Or if they can afford to hire locally, they can't find the talent that's willing to work and do the role almost at any cost. And so it's about enabling your business, and then, your business grows, you're paying more tax, you're contributing to the local economy, and actually, it all comes back as well. And as you said, you're helping people in, some of these other countries that maybe their local opportunities aren't as good. They're making a bigger difference, and we keep the whole world kind of spinning around.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I know you've got a new book out, Digital Delegation. Tell us a little bit about the book, and if somebody goes and grabs the book, what can they expect from the book?
So they can expect a very short, actionable book. So when I set out to write it with my co-author, Esther Jacobs, and we both said the same thing. We want to help people, first of all, understand why they should hire a virtual assistant, right? Why should they have one? And second of all, we want to tell them how to do it, right? Because it is hard initially, but we can guide people through it. And we set out, and initially, I think my aim was I wanted it to be 50 pages because I love a short book, right? I want it to be basically long enough, but no longer, right? To tell people what they need to know. So it steps you through everything around, right? What can you do with a virtual assistant? Why should you have one? And the biggest thing for me that I was told this quite recently is like, basically, if you don't have an assistant, you are the assistant. And given that assistants are typically, if you hire from Eastern Europe, probably like $6 to $8 an hour, pretty sure everyone listening to this podcast, your time is worth more than $6 to $8 an hour. So if you don't have one, you are the assistant. And then wanting people to do a really good job of remote hiring. Like you said, unless you went to a better school than me, and, remote hiring 101 was not on my syllabus at my college or university. And so actually there is skill in doing it. It is hard, but there are certain steps you can take to massively improve your kind of success at getting the right person. So that's, we embarked to set out a really clear, actionable book, and Digital Delegation was kind of born as a result.
That's awesome. So where can people find the book? Where can they get it?
Yeah, simply head on over to Amazon. We keep it down. I think it's like 99 pence in the UK, 99 cents in the US. We have an unusual approach to copyright as well. We've got copy left. We're very happy for people to reproduce it as long as they credit it. And again, because we just want to help people out. I mean, I've got a very clear and personal mission. I come across way too many business owners, suffering from burnout, that are working too many hours, not enjoying their lives kind of thing. So I want to help people. And that's my big mission. So I'm kind of this year, I'm aiming to kind of help 500 business owners like free up their time and have a better life and, make more profit. And so, hence why I do things like Digital Delegation. So Amazon, it's available there in the ebook, and check it out from there. And naturally that, as ever, what some people will do is they'll read it, or they'll start reading it and go, oh man, hiring's hard. I don't have time for this. And obviously naturally from there, that's where we can step in and actually help people with the hiring kind of thing. And that's one of the interesting things about hiring, is that if you read any like CEO books or kind of like, leadership and management books, you will normally see it said that hiring great people is like one of the top 3 things that any CEO must do. And what most people do is they take away from that and say, I need to be good at hiring. But we were never taught how to do that, right? And most of us are not doing our own bookkeeping, right? If you're, Steve, I suspect most of your clients are not doing their own book editing, right? Because it's a skill. No. And what's been really interesting for me over this last few years is just educating people and saying, hey, you're right. As a CEO, as a business owner, you do need to hire great people, but you don't need to be good at the actual nuts and bolts of hiring, right? In the same way you get help with your bookkeeping or your book editing or your SEO, hiring is one of these things that you can get help with it. It's completely okay to kind of, cheat your way through it kind of, and just get help to get the right people from it.
Yeah. And it is so critical. And like anything else, you want to find somebody who's an expert at it. And that's when you're running a business, there's all these things that have to be done, and it's really hard to be an expert at all of them. And that's I think, mindset breakthrough for a lot of people when you start to see growth unlocked, where they start to turn to people who they can lean on. So for somebody to listen to this and they go, hey, Noel's my expert now, how do they find you, and how do they get in touch with you and find out how you can help?
Yeah, simplest way is just head on over to JobRack.eu. The site's there. We've got a ton of information there, and you can, there's a bunch of buttons there that you can click just to book a call with me. I love having conversations with business owners. Just, we can, if you know exactly what you want, great. We can talk through, options on how to get it and how we could help. If you've no idea what you want and you just want to have some kind of business coaching, counseling, therapy, whatever it is you need, we can jump on and then kind of figure out. And I do a lot of that, helping people to figure out right, what roles should they hire next? And actually, is it an executive assistant? Is it an operations manager? Is it a SEO specialist, or whatever it is for their business? And actually helping you figure that out. And that's that is a lovely way for me to spend my day. So head on over to jobrack.eu, book in a call, and then we can chat through from there.
Yeah, we'll link that up along with the book in the show notes. So if you're listening to this and couldn't write all that down, just look in your podcast player. It'll be in the show notes there. And this has been really great. I know this is for a lot of people, this is a big issue right now, and they're trying to wrap their heads around it. So I really, Noel, appreciate you coming and investing some time with me and sharing some of your experience and wisdom. I know that'll help everybody that's listening today. So Noel Andrews, JobRack.eu. Thank you so much. Great to see you again.
No worries, Steve. Really great to chat. Thanks, man.